got another touring car driver lined up, ready to go today, and that is Nic Hamilton.
Oh, sorry.
Of Team Hard. So, creating his car in the Rokit, the lively, brightly covered Rokit livery. So this is a bit exciting. How you doing, mate? You alright?
Not bad, bud. Yourself?
I'm alright, mate. How are we doing in this weird time that we're currently in?
Yeah, it's been an interesting one, to be fair. We obviously had a lot of testing and everything planned before the season start. We did everything and had an extensive testing program out in Spain, which went really well. Then obviously we had our media day. And yeah, we're ready to start the season, and obviously got hit by COVID, which is not a nice situation for anybody.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's been a bit of an interesting / awkward time. I would say interesting by the fact that for me, I think it seems to be the point where it sort of shows life in its purest form, where you're hanging out with your family, you're not necessarily having to rush to work or anything like that at the moment, and yeah, you get some good time with your loved ones, but then you can also go a little bit stir crazy being in the house and not being able to go anywhere. So
I think my wife would totally agree with that. I think she's started to go a little bit crazy right now, but you know that's why she married me. What can I say?
I think she's a very lucky lady.
Well, debatable. Debatable. So, what we've been doing is we've been doing continuous car drawings. Normally, I'm painting with these radio control cars. That's what I normally create with. I don't paint with a brush. I paint with cars. That's what I do. But obviously, I do that at shows and events such as Touring Car. I create live at those events as part of the entertainment, as part of the things at the circuit. So what we've been doing for the last 5 weeks, 5 weeks tomorrow, is doing continuous car drawings. So basically, you'll see me draw your Volkswagen Passat in its Rokit Red livery here on this piece of paper. Is that nice and clear for you? Can you see that?
Oh, no. Ooh, I think...
Oh, sorry, can you hear me, yeah?
Sorry, go ahead. I had a phone call.
That's alright, mate. That's alright. So can you see the piece of paper in front of me here?
Sure. Yeah.
So basically, I'm going to draw your car, your race car, your Rokit Red Volkswagen Passat as a drawing in about 30 to 40 minutes. And during that time, I want to hear about your career and how you got to the position of being on the touring car grid, and you know, because you've worked up from the Renault Clio, from the support packages with the Clios and all sorts. So I'd love to hear about your story about that whilst I'm drawing, and then hopefully by the end of that, throw my pen away. Hopefully by the end of that, your car will appear here.
Okay, cool, fine.
And I think this is from the Silverstone test day, based on the image, a Jacob Ebery image, I presume. So I'll start drawing. I'll put the pen down, and then you can just kind of tell us how you've got to, and also how you work with sponsors and what you've been doing during the kind of the COVID times as well.
Yeah, sure. Okay. Wow, where do I start? So for me, obviously, I was born too much premature and diagnosed with cerebral palsy, which is actually the proper term is spastic diplegia, which is a form of cerebral palsy. So cerebral palsy, it was for me caused by lack of oxygen to the brain, being diagnosed with the condition, which then meant that I wasn't breathing when I came out of my mum or when I was born, and had to be whisked away to an incubator. I was in there for 6 weeks on life support, and I mean, I came home, but I wasn't actually progressing as a normal baby. I wasn't crawling or anything like that, and so my parents took me back to the hospital and said, look, you know, our child isn't really progressing, what do we do? And that's when I got diagnosed with cerebral palsy, and they told me that, or told my parents that I would never walk. and that my right eye would be quite severe in terms of, because I was born with a squint, so it was always turning out and inwards, and then it would get worse as time went on. So I guess my parents made a collective decision to make my life as tough as possible and not sort of wrap me up in cotton wool, where they basically allowed me to do near enough anything I wanted to do within reason, to where I had to learn to try and walk. And with my condition, my legs were so tight, and basically with my growth spurt, my legs would, or my skeleton would grow faster than my muscles, which meant that they were constantly bent, constantly tight, and I wasn't able to do the usual walking up steps or actually standing up was a real difficulty. So I always wanted to try and focus on overcoming my condition as much as possible, and my parents sort of treated me like an able-bodied person, to where they were always having a go at me. Nick, straighten your legs. Nick, make sure you don't fall over, stop tripping over on things. And I was really struggling with just the general everyday tasks, and I was falling over and tripping over everything. I couldn't pick up my legs or my feet properly when I was walking. I was always dragging my trailing leg, and falling over, hurting myself, bleeding, and my parents didn't really know how to help, because obviously as parents that have had an able-bodied son in Lewis, for example, and there's not necessarily any books on how to bring up a child with cerebral palsy, so they really didn't know what to do, and I got offered the opportunity to have a life-changing operation at the age of 4, which was to it was called a tendon release. So it was to release the tendons in the back of my hamstrings, back of my ankles, and my groin muscle, which then meant I was able to put my feet down fully, as in the soles of my feet, whereas before I could only walk on my tiptoes. So if you were to try and walk on your tiptoes and have constantly bent legs and try and walk up and down stairs, you'd pretty much struggle with balance.
So you had to so that was basically at the age of 4. You then had to kind of relearn how to walk and how to do that process.
Totally. So that completely changed my process. I had to basically start again. That's pretty quick.
So there's a basic outline in about 5 minutes or so.
Wow.
So
pretty good.
you can kind of tell that there's your race car. We're now going to get the colour in there. Going to start getting the details in there. So yeah, amazing to hear this so far. I mean, it's it's what when you hear it firsthand, it's completely different.
It's a long story to get to that picture that you've got on your screen.
It's all right. It's good. So before you had the operation, and
I had the operation. Then I basically had to try and learn to walk again, and the idea was I went to primary school, and I was actually okay, but I was having to do a lot of physiotherapy through lunchtime periods, and I was never able to actually hang with my mates at lunchtime. I was always doing physiotherapy, which is almost like homework, and trying to stretch my legs and keep them as supple as possible. I then went to secondary school, and secondary school was like 4 times the size of my little village school, which was a primary school, and so I wanted to continue walking. The more I walked, the stronger my legs became, and went for my first day at school, and I got on with the kids really well, even though they sort of look at you like you're like an alien. Kids are pretty brutal. They don't understand why you look like the way you do sometimes. And so, I mean, I was walking from class to class. Obviously at primary school, you're in one class for all of your lessons, whereas at secondary school you got to walk from the design technology block to the English block or language block or whatever it is, and you got to have these heavy books on the back of your in your bag with you carrying around, and it was just killing me. I couldn't physically do it any longer than 1 or 2 days, and I was absolutely knackered by the end of the day. So my parents decided to put me into a wheelchair, which I thought was a really cool idea. Meant that I was able to almost be a little bit lazy and not have to worry about trying to get to places on time and walking around and stuff. So long story short, I ended up being in a wheelchair for 5 years, and I pretty much became wheelchair bound, where I became super lazy and lost all of the use of my legs near enough.
Wow. Right, and that was just because you just weren't using them as, even though you could walk with some hindrance as such, but you was like, right, okay, more of a wheelchair user from that point.
Completely, yeah, and I couldn't really go to the toilet and back without being tired. So it was sort of a bad. It was sort of a bad decision, but it took me 5 years to realise. Then all I did was I loved motorsport and obviously following my brother, and initially we were just a poor black family with something to do on a weekend, and that's where motorsport came into our family, trying to get Lewis into go-karting when he was 8 years old, and it was all about him just having some fun on a weekend. And by the age of 10 he was British champion, and then signed to McLaren by 13, and then something that was just meant to be a hobby and fun ended up being a potential career for Lewis and for the family. So at this time now, trying to overcome my condition, I'm following Lewis around the world, with his motorsport, and obviously that's all I knew. I eat, sleep and breathe motorsport. But I physically couldn't do it myself, even though I wanted to. So my dad, actually, taking you back, when I was 7, he got me a little cadet car that he rented off a friend, and said, Nick, today's your day. You can learn to actually drive a go-kart for once. And so he said he'd take me to a car park where there was nothing I could hit, and basically said, left foot is brake, right foot's go. And he did a little brake test, and I didn't really stop when he pushed me for this brake test.
And
he said it was good enough. He said it.
So like when you said, right, when you found out it was your turn, like, how was that? How was that feeling?
Yeah, I mean, I turned. We had, obviously Lewis was in karting at the time, and he was sponsored by McLaren, so we had this this Mercedes van with Lewis Hamilton Motorsport on the side, and this time we were actually going racing for me. So I basically had all the gear and no idea sort of situation, and went to this car park, and my dad said, look, just go in one direction, turn around, come back. Turn around, come back, keep basically doing a figure of 8 and getting used to the controls and blah blah blah. And long story short, I actually hit a curb and disappeared down a 6-foot drop.
Oh man!
Being not able to hit the brake fully because of my legs being so weak. So then racing was sort of out of the context, and it was never going to happen for me. But by the time I got to the age of 19. I was sort of now focusing on trying to get out of my wheelchair and really work on strengthening my legs. And I was just getting bullied everywhere I went, school, walking down the road, people laughing at me. And I just felt that the only way for me to be as normal as possible is to literally get out of my wheelchair and try and overcome the condition more and more. So I put all of my eggs into one basket and focused on strengthening my legs physically and making sure that I was a bit more confident in myself.
And how did you do that?
Pardon?
And how did you do that? Was that like through training? Did you get on? Did you put yourself into like?
Yes. So I started doing online sim gaming, which back then was nothing. Now it's now it's esports.
Yeah, massive now.
But I did, which is now massive. But yeah, I did that, and I got really good at it with using buttons on the steering wheel. I never was able to use my legs fully to be able to accelerate and brake. So I started learning the ins and outs and the foundation of motorsport through gaming. I never did karting, and then I kept pestering my dad to put me in a race car when I got to about 17, actually 18, and he actually called Jonathan Palmer and said to Jonathan, I want to get Nick in a car because he's pestering me, and I want to at least give him an opportunity. If you got anything you can do, and Jonathan, obviously, who has Palmer Sport, said, bring him down to one of our days. So I jumped into a BMW M3 with one of their chief instructors, and my dad wasn't really expecting me to do anything decent because it's the first car I'd actually driven. And the last thing I drove was that cadet car when I was 7 that I crashed. So it was a bit of a scary,
so
situation.
From 7 years old in a cadet car to you now being like 18, 19, and you're in a BMW M3 is that Brands Hatch or is that?
No, so I was at Palm Sport, which is Bedford Autodrome.
Yeah, okay. Yeah,
so I was there, and long story short, I matched the instructor's time on the first day. So
that's
being
pretty
able
good.
to match him was pretty cool, considering he was the chief instructor and one of the quickest round there. So my dad took me back to see if it wasn't a fluke, and then I sort of did the same thing, and then he said, do I want to get into motorsport? And my answer was yes. So he looked at the Clio Cup and said, this could be a good place for you. And I said, well, I don't have a lot of experience. I literally know nothing about it. And he said, that's fine. You're just going to have to learn as you go along. Whereas most people do a lot of practice and testing and everything like that, and they put quite a bit of budget behind it. My dad was actually just took it as it came and just put me in the car, and I had literally one test day before my first race, and the BBC, obviously everybody jumped on it because Lewis is obviously one-time world champion by this point.
Yeah. And
we're now in 2011. So I do my first season in Clio Cup, which is it's like a baptism of fire. Had one day in the car, never known anything about actually driving a car professionally. My first race event, I qualified last, which I expected to, and then but I was only 2/10 off of the next guy ahead of me, so I knew that there was good potential. Then I had this documentary that was released on me all the way through the first year, and if you ever watch it, you'll see I had a lot of ups and downs throughout my first ever year in motorsport, from really good results to nearly killing myself at Thruxton in a Clio Cup car, and then at the end of the year, getting my first top 10 out of a grid of 25, which was really strong, and getting driver of the weekend.
In terms of the car, how is it? So you said on your simulator it was a button. They've been adapted to buttons. So how is the car being adapted for you as well?
Yeah. So every car is pretty much. I try and keep it as simple as possible because moving from car to car is important that you're comfortable as fast as possible, and so mainly I can't use my ankles, I can't flex my ankles, so all of my pressure and control comes from my thigh muscle, so I'm really short as well, and so I have to have the pedals very, very close to me but also very wide, so the brake pedal is the same size as the clutch and the brake pedal together.
Okay.
In terms of width, and then the throttle pedal is probably just as wide, but not as wide, and with a ton of grip tape then we've taken the clutch pedal out, and I have a hand clutch on the steering wheel.
So, how does that operate? Is that done by? How does it operate on the steering wheel?
It's a paddle on the back, so it's like an F1 paddle system almost.
Yeah.
It's just carbon fibre paddles on the back of the steering wheel. You can use either one, and so we literally bought that clutch system and put it in the Clio. And once I'd sort of learnt in the Clio how to use it and stuff, I was able to then take it to different championships and different cars whenever I wanted to.
Okay.
So obviously I did my first 2 years. I did Clio Cup in 2011 and then 2012. And my dad turned around and said, Nick, if you want to continue racing, you're going to have to do it on your own. I'm not going to help you anymore with finances or anything like that. So I pretty much got dropped on my arse, near enough. And having had this bug of racing and realising that although I didn't have any podiums or top 5 results, I had top 10 results in Clios, and I knew that with more practice and more testing and time, I could achieve pretty cool things, and I needed the funding to do it. And the thing is, obviously, being related to my brother, everyone expects that I've got more money than anyone, and trying to tell people the actual story that I do everything on my own, and all of my sponsors and funding comes of me doing it in my own bedroom, basically.
Yeah.
and trying to raise the money to go racing. So I had to basically try and do that in 2013, and I raised just enough to do a little bit of European touring cars, and only managed to afford like 3 races, with my best result being in Monza, I think, and I was like 10th out of like a 30 car grid, which is pretty cool for my first race. And then I had to stop after that, and then 14 I didn't have any money, and then 2015 I tried to revitalise myself, revamp myself, and go into the British Touring Car Championship, because I knew that that's the place to be. So obviously I did 4 races in the Audi with AMD.
Yep.
And I sort of created history being the first disabled athlete in the championship, and that was a cool thing. And then I ran out of budget after 4 rounds, and I didn't race in 2016. 17 I then went back to Clio's, and I was just trying to figure out ways of how the hell do you keep sponsors? How do you continue to work with them? How do you develop yourself to make yourself more of a valuable asset and individual for certain partners? And because I was doing it on my own and I had no real guidance, I was sort of just making mistakes, and that's why I was dropping in and out of motorsport constantly.
Mm.
And then I finally got a full season under my belt in Clio's in 2018, and then I got an opportunity to go into touring cars full time with Motorbase in 2019, and that's where I picked up my title sponsor Rokit for that season, and it was almost like the break that I'd been working towards for so long.
So how did that come about? Like, how did you work that? How did that was that through social? What platforms were you like? Right, this is how I'm going to do it. If with a kind of clearer head of how sponsorship works and whatnot.
Well, firstly, I love the saying that it's not what you know, it's who you know. And networking is very, very important. Now, I was always making myself a nuisance by emailing as many people as possible and just basically going off of percentages. So if I was to if I was to send out 100 emails to different brands and get at least a 10% hit rate or response rate, then that's a positive, even if it's a yes or no. It builds up my contact bases. So I continued just to do it to the point where my dad actually met the founder of Rokit. He met him a couple of years ago and wanted to do a little bit of business with my dad. And I actually went to this business meeting with him, and I met the founder, which is a guy called Jonathan Kendrick, who's an amazing guy, such a fantastic entrepreneur. Now, after this meeting and a couple of months later, it actually never went into anything. The meeting didn't really create anything. So I thought to myself, well, I've now met this guy, and he seems really nice, and he loves his motorsport, and I wonder if he'd be interested in helping me and being a part of me. So I contacted him at the end of 2018, asking if he would sponsor me in touring cars, because I knew I had this opportunity there, he pretty much said yes straight away, and that was it. I had my title sponsor, which was great, and then as well as just having Rokit, I still have very well known brands that are behind me, the likes of Monster Energy, Big Change. At the time of last year, it was Duo, which was a good brand as well. NGK spark plugs, obviously very well known in the motorsport industry or the automotive industry. And so I then started to learn how to look after partners, how to look after people, and to continue to make yourself valuable. Now I work off the base of, I know a lot about Formula One and how brands are looked after in Formula One, and even though touring cars is not on the level of Formula One, I want my partners to get the same sort of treatment at a race weekend or through socials than they would if they were sponsoring a Formula One driver. And that's how I wanted to set myself up, and I've actually done pretty decent at making that, a reality. Now in business, because motorsport is a business and it's a very cutthroat one at that, you're always going to have situations that catch you out, just like this COVID situation. And so I was, fully immersed into my season of 2019, and there was a ton of negative criticism, that Nic Hamilton's not going to be good enough for the motor base seat, and blah blah blah, and all this stuff. Then we went to Brands Hatch for the first race, and my target was to qualify top 20 at least, because in British touring cars to get to the top 20 is super difficult. You have the likes of Plato and Turkington sometimes, down in the 20s, and everyone's so close you can't get out of it. So I thought, top 20 is a good plan, good target, and we qualified 20th, and actually were the top rookie at Brands. And then in the first race, I went from 20th to 11th in the first 3 laps. And that for me just proved to myself that I can race with these guys, and that if I have more experience and more, I'll get there. But as I said, with motorsport being a business, sometimes you do get caught out, and I got caught out at the end of last year with a sponsor of mine who reneged on their agreement, which meant that I had to miss the last 2 rounds. So I went from being a fully fledged touring car driver to literally having no seat, and really not knowing what to do with myself and how the hell I was going to get back into a seat. Now we're always looking at options, and I don't have a management agency or anything like that. I just literally do it myself, and
And that's hard. I mean, that's hard. Yeah, to be like racing and then also trying to manage all those relationships and find sponsorship. And that's, I mean, I do it myself when I'm doing my thing. I'm talking to brands and that takes time. It just takes a lot of time to get that to make that relationship flourish almost.
Oh, honestly, it's it's a full-time job, because you always have to be understanding of the brand and understand who they are, what their targets are, what their goals are, and how you can help. But you also have to be understanding of their marketing budget, the way they work, their relationships, how they go about promoting their business, their brand ethos, all these sort of things. And this is what sort of taught me so much of being able of sort of jumping in and out of motorsport and failing and picking myself up and going again. I'm a true believer in before you can succeed, first you have to fail and learn why. And basically now this year going into 2020, is a culmination of 7 years of hard work to be able to get behind a wheel in a touring car again. And I've got the opportunity with Team Hard, which is a team that not a lot of people feel are a top team or a strong team. They have a sort of a reputation about themselves, which people can just make up on the spot. But from my experience with Team Hard so far, and when I had a meeting with them, I was so taken back by their passion, by the way they work, and by their potential. And I was super shocked to sort of to see that firsthand. And the fact that they have good drivers in Jack Goff and Mike Bushell planned for this year, I wanted to be a part of that development and growth with the team, and know that we might not have the best package for the year coming ahead, but it's going to be an interesting one to continue to develop the car, develop the team, and develop myself. And so when I got the opportunity with Team Hard, I jumped at it, and there was a lot of people up for the seat, and I was literally the last guy to take it. And Tony Gillam and the team put a lot of trust and respect into me, being a part of the team, and I'm so happy of my decision, and was really looking forward to starting the season.
Yeah.
Until we got hit with the COVID situation. But
so you went and did some testing out in Spain. So how did the car feel? How have you changed? Have you changed much from when you're in the motorbase seat to your Clio? How much is the car different to what you've driven before?
Yeah, well, firstly, I really realised that I haven't had a lot of experience. People think I've been around motorsport for donkey's years, but really, I haven't had any. I haven't had year after year after year after year of racing. I've always done a year and dropped out and whatever, and so doing consecutive years, especially jumping into the motorbase car and learning touring cars. Initially, when I jumped in it in 2019, my first lap out, I was like, how the hell am I going to drive this car? Because it felt so big. It felt so big, it felt so wide, and it was wheel spinning in like third gear. And I was like, how the hell am I going to drive this thing? And I spent the whole year just trying to develop and getting better. And even though you're racing for 23rd, 22nd, 21st, 20th place, you're still racing the likes of Adam Morgan and Dan Camish and Plato and Oliphant, that are maybe having a bad day, but they're having a bad day because it's tough. And you make one mistake and it can be 2 tenths can cover 8 or 9 places. So I was, I really became to develop throughout the year. And so jumping into the team hard car, and the fact that I hadn't actually been in a touring car since Knock Hill last year, when it was my last race with Motorbase, I sort of felt at home really quickly. And learning the procedures of touring cars is quite difficult. With the whole tyre procedure, warming everything up, and radio procedure, and start procedures, and everything, which takes you a long time to learn. To be able to then jump into the team hard car and feel at home was something I really realised that consecutive years of racing really, really helps. So we went out to Spain, and that was the first time I'd done consecutive test days in a race car, and we were meant to do 4 days, so Monday to Friday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. There's actually 5 days planned, and we only ended up doing like 3-ish because of COVID. And the team had made some really good developments with the car, and they were very, very excited to get them in, or get them on the car, and for the testing program to go underway. And I was actually the first person to drive the car for the year, and so that was a really cool honour for me. And we had a really positive test. Obviously, Jack being I would say the number one driver, the driver to always match yourself against, and to be your benchmark. He'd obviously spent the whole year in the car last year, and actually won at Silverstone, so he's got a lot of experience, and he was able to show what the difference was between the changes that they'd made through the winter. And so I was really happy with my development going into this year. And then we just went to the media day, and I don't know, tyre temperatures and track temperature was completely different from Spain to Silverstone. And so as a team, I would say we sort of struggled. But in terms of myself, I was only 2 tenths off Jack, and quicker than Howard. So for me, in terms of where I am in my development, I feel like I'm becoming a more well-rounded driver. So I think there's only positives to come as soon as we get started.
So in terms of what you've been doing during lockdown, so have you been keeping track? You said you're pretty good on the old simulators and stuff. So have you been going back to doing some sim racing, or?
Yeah, I've done a few bits and bobs, but I'm quarantined, not quarantined, locked down at my girlfriend's house, my girlfriend's parents' house, and all of my sim kit is at my apartment. So I haven't been doing as much online sim stuff as I would like to. I've done a bit of iRacing here and there. I did 2 races of the All Stars Esports Cup for the race championship, which is actually title sponsored by Rokit, and so I've done a bit of that, and I did the virtual GP for Formula 1. So I've done a few bits, but everyone is really practicing and spending hours and hours and hours on their rigs trying to get faster. And I literally just haven't been able to do that because I've been at my girlfriend's parents' place. So I haven't done as much as I'd like to, but I'm going to try and do more. That's for sure.
So, and have you been keeping up the fitness as well? I've noticed on Instagram that you've been doing some training and stuff. So
it's important to continue. Staying on top of everything, because you never know when you're going to be in the car. They're talking about potentials of August the 1st, but you never know. I mean, I'm hoping that we were able to race in a safe environment, because obviously the COVID situation is so difficult for everybody to understand and to make plans around. I want to go racing is my main thing, but I only want to do it when I know that the team, the whole BTCC circus and the fans are all safe to enjoy it.
Well, I mean that's very much why I started doing these and started doing the driver talks, because it I mean normally I'm busy at a track, I'm painting away and doing my thing, so I don't get a chance to kind of talk to drivers or that. So this has kind of meant that I've been able to catch up with people and chat about their experience, and it's been fascinating to hear your career and how you progressed with it and how you've been determined to do that. I mean, it absolutely shows that when you're put in different situations, or you want to get something, you want to prove it for you. You want to show the driver that you can be. And I think that's a really fantastic mental state to be in as well. I think it's a really positive way of showing it. So hopefully here you can hopefully see your car taking shape, and we're nearly there. So
I can't believe how quick you do it.
Yeah, it's a bit of practice now. And, we get there. We get there in the end. So in terms of your other sponsors like Monster and whatnot, how have you been working with them over the last few weeks? Has you been keeping in touch with your sponsors?
Yeah, I mean it's really important to continue creating content and stuff for your sponsors. Mainly like Monster, for example, is one that they're always trying to keep active on social media, and so over the last month or so, I've done this live Instagram, just like I'm doing with you, but I call it Hanging with Hammy, and it's basically just a chat like this, but on my live with celebrities and athletes that I can get my hands on.
Yeah.
And I've just really enjoyed it, just like you. It's making you sort of meet people that you haven't met before, or learning more and more about just general people that are enjoying their situation with their families and whatever, even though it's a dark time. And you get to learn so much about just how humans work. And so I've really enjoyed it with them. And so with Monster, that's pretty much what we did. And then with the likes of Big Change, I've got like webinars and stuff with them next week, and with Rokit, I'm doing their title sponsored esports series, and so I'm just trying to keep busy and trying to keep on top of things. But it's really important to keep your relationships going. And then in this time I did my NHS challenge, which was called One Step at a Time, whereas I was walking up my girlfriend's parents' garden steps 151 times up and down, because 151 was emulating the amount of...
Oh, I think we're frozen. It's probably getting a call.
There we go. I managed to raise £15,000 for the NHS.
Well, I mean, that's awesome, mate.
Which is cool. Yeah, so I've just been trying to do little bits and bobs, and it was cool to be able to raise money for people and to help them. And then as well as this Hanging with Hammy thing, I actually realised that introducing your fans into your own social media Instagram live is really cool. So people were just requesting all the time to join my live, and I ended up doing a live Instagram for 3 hours one night.
Wow.
And literally just talking to loads of different people for about 3-4 minutes. So someone would request and I would accept them, and then I'd ask who they are, where they're from, and it can be anywhere, and I mean anywhere. China. I think my favourite was Kenya. And you just talk about anything and bring these guys to the forefront. They're following you as a role model, but really, I want to know about my fans and who they are and what they're into, and what makes them tick. So I'm just trying to learn as much as I can throughout this period of time, until we get going again.
Right. Well, I'm gonna spin this round. So we're at this is 264. Thank you so much for joining me. Ines. Hope you enjoyed it. I'll get this posted up on the social as well. So there is your
There is your car.
Quick.
There
I'm
is your...
super impressed with that.